Hey everyone, welcome to Cross-Gen Gaming. I'm one of your hosts, John.
I'm the other host, Dylan.
Dylan is one of the other hosts.
That's me.
And Dylan, I'm a little sad today.
Aren't you always? I feel like most of these have been introed with you being sad.
Listen, there's a lot to be sad about in gaming. I'm not going to be happy about anything because as I've learned by going on Reddit, you have to be angry at games all the time or you're not a true gamer.
Exactly, and you have to make sure you harass everyone that is involved with any sort of video game thing if it's not exactly to your liking, and even if it is to your liking, hate them anyways.
Exactly.
I've learned from the best.
Reggie's scared to be at E3. We know that. He quit the company so he could go work for GameStop and do a cool trick. And it's just because he's scared, really. Yeah. The reason I'm sad is because I can't really get mad at anybody because nobody has exclusives right now. There's not really any exclusives. And before we jump into it, I mean exclusives for the current consoles.
Oh, yeah.
You can play everything everywhere, basically.
There's no next gen right now.
Right, you can only play Halo on Xbox, but like, hey, you got that base that base Xbox One, you're good.
Hey, you can even play it on PC now.
You can play it on PC. Why not? Hey, you want to play Horizon Zero Dawn? PC, baby. PC? You want to play Horizon Forbidden West? Base PS4.
Get a console that's been out for years.
10 years, actually. Yeah.
Has it really? Oh
almost.
My God.
2013 is when it first came out, I believe.
Oh boy.
Almost 10 years. Everyone was like, man, the Xbox 360 is getting real long in the tooth, huh?
Yeah.
They didn't know what was coming. So yeah, Sony has had 2 state of plays in March, but the notable thing about that is that there were very few, if any, PS5 exclusive games. There are exclusives. God of War Ragnarok is an exclusive. Horizon Forbidden West is obviously an exclusive, but very few of those were exclusive to only PS5. Most of those, if not all of them, will work on a PS4, which is really interesting.
Yeah, it's super interesting that we've kind of gotten to this point where just the next gen hasn't even felt like a next gen yet because we're still living in the old age.
We're still just dealing with stuff, yeah.
And then they listed a bunch of games, but a few of the notable ones is one called Exoprimal, which is a new co-op space dinosaur shooter from Capcom. That isn't Dino Crisis. And
it's very sad. Hold on, very sad that it's not Dino Crisis, except for the fact that now there's this really sweet. This is the description, by the way. I am going to play this game because it looks amazing. Capcom has announced Exoprimal, a new team-based action game where players use futuristic mech suits to take down monolithic dinosaurs. Are you kidding me? I'm in. It looks hysterical.
It does sound really cool. Another game that they showed off was called Valkyrie Elysium, which apparently was a revival of the classic RPG series, and I didn't even know that. It looks all right. I don't know.
I think it looks ugly.
You think it looks ugly?
Yeah, just like we'll show a picture right here of like the weird face. Don't like that.
Faces. And then the last sort of big thing was a new expansion with co-op for Returnal. And that's really the only thing there that was just PS5 exclusive. But hey, people like Eternal, and the little expansion seems nice.
Yeah, Returnal is really, really good. I highly recommend it. Anything by Housemarque or Housemarque, however they want to pronounce it.
I believe it's Marquee.
Really great stuff. I think it's Marquee. I've heard someone say Housemarque. Whatever.
Who knows?
The problem is that was on March 9th. The problem with that is that the reactions to this state of play, which is basically just a direct. I almost called it a direct because it's basically just a direct.
That's what it is. Direct but blue.
Right, exactly. Here's what TechRadar had to say about it. Unfortunately, we found the last state of play to be a bit tepid, but hopefully the next showcase will be a bit more captivating. Gaming Age also says, will Sony ever put one of these out that garners universal praise? I wouldn't expect it unless it includes more first-party titles and maybe the reveal of Final Fantasy Remake Part 2. That actually would be really, really sweet if they're like, by the way, it's coming out now and PS5 exclusive, although that would make me very mad because I don't have a PS5. And you can't really find one, so yeah.
Yeah, that quote specifically kind of I agree a lot with, because it's like, even then when we've had pretty big ones like with the Last of Us Part 2, it just was like, there wasn't even that much praise for it. They always feel like they never have the state of plays are never at direct level, and this is even furthered by the other state of play that they are doing that is just completely dedicated to Hogwarts Legacy and is showing off 14 minutes of its gameplay.
14 minutes of PS5 gameplay, yes.
Which is great,
but
Counterpoint, who cares?
Counterpoint, who cares? And also Counterpoint, this will literally play on everything. It is coming out on PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series, and PC.
Yeah.
So, and I think even Switch, maybe even Switch, maybe not, who knows? But the reality is, other than Returnal, none of these games are exclusive to PS5 alone. In fact, the only games that I know of that are actually exclusive to PS5 right now are Returnal and Ratchet & Clank. That's all that I can think of off the top of my head. I don't have a list because I did a bad job.
That are out? Yeah, I think so.
That are out. I think those are the only two that are like actually you can only play this on PS5. Oh, and the Demon's Souls remake.
Oh, obviously, yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah,
but it kind of leads into this really interesting situation where we have both the current gen consoles. I say current gen because it's not next gen because it's right now. You know, next gen is technically PS6.
I mean,
and we all know what we're talking about. We're splitting hairs. But current gen stuff, PS5, Xbox Series consoles, they're kind of having to be held back a little bit theoretically, by the base Xbox One, the base PS4, because the reality is all Xbox games work on both the Series and the One consoles as well. Mm-hmm. Halo Infinite can be played on a base Xbox One. Yep. You shouldn't have that. It looks awful, and I've made it very clear my thoughts on Mr. Don Matrick and his whole decisions making for that, so I'm not going to go back down path. But interestingly, the one company that's actually doing exclusives really well is Nintendo.
Good old Nintendo. Good old Nintendo, the people who don't give a shit what everyone else is doing, and they just do what they do.
They really hate us gamers, but they also love us gamers. It's very weird.
It is such a weird sort of system, but it is the Nintendo system. They've got a whole slew of exclusives that are only really for the Switch, which you could say is like, well, it's because the Switch is a crappy system and it can only work on there. Whatever. Shut up.
My counterpoint is Breath of the Wild. Shut up.
Thank you. But yeah, they've got a slew of exclusives, even only recently announced. We've got Kirby: The Forgotten Land.
How strong is Kirby's tongue, do you think?
We're not going to talk. I don't want to think about him. I don't want to think
about
the mouthful mode.
The mouthful mode?
No, I just said it.
Okay.
Think about it.
Okay.
I hate it so much. We've also got the Wii Sports sort of sequel with Nintendo Switch Sports, Mario Strikers Battle League, Fire Emblem Warriors, Three Hopes, Xenoblade 3, the new Pokemans, Bayonetta 3. Well, maybe. We're not entirely sure.
We got a couple maybes here for 2022. By the way, all of these are allegedly 2022.
Oh, that's right.
So, still.
But, yeah, so we got the Mayo 3, Metro Prime 4, Splatoon 3, Breath of the Wild 2. All of those are most likely, it would be very surprising if they're not, exclusive to the Switch.
They're definitely 100% exclusive to the Switch, for sure. I do want to say two things. Number one, I will be playing that bowling battle royale. You can catch these pins as instead of saying catch this L, you're gonna say catch these pins. And also, I need Game Freak to chill out on making Pokemon games every year that are like good. We just got Arceus. We don't need a new Pokemon game. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna say that.
Let that breathe. It was so surprising when they already immediately announced the new set of games. I was like
2 months later.
People are only just now getting Arceus and singing its praise. Give it a second.
And also somehow looking past the glaring problems with that game that they threw Nintendo under the bus, being like, your console's not good enough. We made a good one, which is anyway really, really interesting.
Counterpoint: Breath of the Wild. Shut up.
How do you feel about exclusives in general, though?
In general, I feel like I have a very kind of iffy stance with them because it's like,
oh, iffy, you say? Okay.
On the one hand, it's like more access to games, the better. More people can play the games that they want, which I think it makes sense. Like you don't want to go, like you can see a specific game and you're like, oh, I would love to play that game, but oh, it's only on this console that I don't have. And for most people, not us true gamers, for most people, it's hard to justify shelling out like a couple $100 to buy a whole console for essentially just one or two games that you want to play.
Right.
So I completely understand that, and I completely get that point. But at the same time, it's like if there's no exclusives, then what's the point? You know?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like, what's the point of having? Where's the competition? You know?
I can tell you right now, there is none. We saw this back in the early 80s, and by we, not me, because I was not alive, and neither were you. But
Certainly not me.
The reason that we have multiple companies now, it's kind of a combination of Atari kind of being just real whack, and also Nintendo kind of having a strong a stranglehold on the gaming market after they revived it in North America back after the crash. So for context, if you guys don't know, Atari was the gigantic force for of video games back in the late 70s, early 80s. And because video games are still kind of the Wild West, imagine how much more wilder and more western they were there.
Oh boy, I could only imagine.
They flooded the market with horrible, garbage, broken games. The big one being what? E.T.
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 Everyone's favorite.
Such a horrible game. They literally had to make the entire game in 6 weeks. Which, if you don't know development, that's difficult now. Imagine doing that in like the early 80s.
That is ridiculously short.
So then a couple years later, Nintendo came in and said, okay, cool. Now we're going to have the Nintendo seal of approval, which means that this game has been vetted by us, Nintendo, and it's going to be decent. It's going to be worth your money.
I did not know that's actually what that was about. The little
Exactly.
seal, right? That's what you're talking about?
Yep. And the reason that was a big deal is they had to pay Nintendo people, like anyone who wanted to make a game for a Nintendo console, like legally, they had to pay licensing fees and cartridge fees, and they were only allowed to make a certain number of games per year. The problem with that is Nintendo was extorting all of the business partners, and they got really mad at the fees they had to pay. So the second that any kind of competition showed up, the Genesis, they jumped ship and started making games over there. So the reality is, exclusives make competition viable, and this utopia of you can play any game on any system is a horrible idea, because then there's no incentive for anybody to make anything that's of any quality for us as the people who are consuming it, and they can charge whatever they want. It's bad. It's bad for us. 100%, zero, like full stop. Exclusives make competition viable. Competition is necessary for us to have good games.
Wow. So you're full on the end.
100%.
You need exclusives.
You need not exploitative exclusives, but I do think that you need to have some level. Like if Halo was just available anywhere, that'd be horrible. That'd be bad.
That's fair.
It forces the companies to actually improve and iterate versus just sitting back on whatever they felt like. Like, oh, we can keep doing this.
So with that in mind, Mr. JB, do you think that Sony and Microsoft specifically right now need more exclusives?
For the current consoles? Man, I don't know. It's so tough. My gut reaction is yes, but they're still selling, so maybe they don't. I don't know. It's really hard, right?
It is a weird position. I feel like Sony, I think they need to, because I mean, what's their game right now? Like what, or not, I guess that's in the specific context isn't the right word, but what's their specific goal?
Like what's your plan of action?
Yeah, what is Sony got that Xbox doesn't right now?
What Sony has currently is the promise of a bunch of cool games coming out and the fact that you can't find their console.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of their thing right now.
That's a good problem to have if you're Sony.
It is, to be fair. They are, even though they're not like making many games and there really aren't many of the exclusives, even Microsoft, they're in a good position right now. Mm-hmm. But I think Sony, if they want to kind of keep up this idea of exclusives and their single player story driven games, I think they need to start making more of them, or at least start releasing them, so that sort of reputation, that plan can keep up. Microsoft, I feel like, is in a little bit of a different boat, because at least right now they've been so hard into this Game Pass idea that,
which is making them so much money.
Yeah.
Oh man.
It works, and it's a good plan. So I don't think right now they need to completely focus on exclusives. Like,
when you say exclusives specifically for the series consoles.
Yes, for the series consoles. Like, I don't think that's really that big of a priority for them right now, because that kind of goes against what the Game Pass is about. Mm. And that's their big cash cow right now. That's their moneymaker, and that's what they've been pushing hard.
What was the recent numbers for like 25 million subscribers as of like a couple months ago or something like that?
Yeah.
That's insane.
That's a lot of money.
That's absolutely insane.
That's a lot of cash.
Jeez.
So I think Microsoft, they sort of need to, I think they need to get there. But Sony, I feel like you need to kind of get this now. But at the same time, the consoles are selling, so what the fuck do I know?
No, I agree. I really think that Microsoft kind of has an entirely different plan. And the reality is we know that Microsoft will have exclusives, but we don't know that they're coming now. We don't really even know what exclusives
Microsoft
has. Like, we know Starfield will be an exclusive, yeah. We know that like there's other, like Perfect Dark is going to come out at some point. We know there's a new Fable game coming out. We just got Halo Infinite. We know for a fact that they're going to keep making Gears of War until they can run that series into the ground like they've already done. Now, we know Microsoft has all these exclusives coming out. We just don't know that they're going to happen now. Or we know that they're not going to happen now. We know they're going to happen at some point. It's just a matter of when, right?
Yeah, that's true. They are doing these big acquisitions with at least some of this sort of exclusivity idea in mind.
Absolutely. And I mean, the reality is some next big project from, Activision Blizzard, whenever that deal, when that deal closes in fiscal year 2023, or the fact that they now own Bethesda, we know Starfield's going to be exclusive to Microsoft consoles and PC. It's going to be really interesting for them just to kind of guide people into different console spaces, because they're going to eventually have to funnel people out of the Xbox One stuff.
Eventually,
which I think will honestly probably happen the next couple years. Sony, I have no idea about. I don't know what's coming for them that's exclusive. Seriously, I don't think there's like God of War Ragnarok is not going to be PS5 exclusive. We know that. I cannot off the top of my head tell you the big PS5 game that is coming out in the next even year or two. I don't know of one.
Year or two, I have no clue. And like even
there's that Spider-Man game that might be, but we don't know what system that's gonna be on. It might be coming out on both because Miles Morales came out on both.
That's true. And then the same studio, Wolverine. We don't know what that's going on.
And that was just a teaser. I don't even think they're even close to being ready to reveal that.
No, certainly not. Like, outside of the first couple years, I mean, the only game I could see being PS5 exclusive is the second half of FF7R.
For a year at least, because that's going to come out eventually on other stuff.
True, that is true. So in this whole slew of exclusivities and all this, Nintendo's different. But what makes them different?
A lot of things make them different. Number one, their console is exceptionally different because Nintendo Nintendo always does that. I think something that's worth noting in this situation is that of the three, Nintendo is the only one that sells its console at a profit. Everyone else is selling their console at a loss. All of their consoles.
I forgot about that.
That's really important because if you're Sony and you're selling out of PS5s, it doesn't really matter because you're selling them at a loss anyway. So you want people to buy games for your console. But they can't because they're not because there's not a lot of exclusives in this. So you're like, whatever, which is just really interesting. Nintendo is selling their Switches, all the Switches at a profit, which is nuts. Like, genuinely think about that.
Every single sale
of the 106 whatever million,
all of those up.
All of them, they made at least $1 on.
Yeah, that's a lot of dollars.
That's a lot of dollars. just off of $1, and they probably made more.
Oh, almost certainly.
Also, consider this. Consider that a PS5, when they sell it, they are losing $1 for every single one that they sell. You see the problem here. They want you to have the console so that you'll buy games for the console where they make a lot of their money, right?
Yeah.
It's just a really interesting thing.
It is a very weird scenario, especially with how Sony's kind of dealing with it and just, not having much of a reason to buy them. So, you don't make much of your money off the console, you make more of your money off the games, but when there's no games, what?
Right.
So instead, Nintendo's just doing the sort of thing of like, how about we? they're taking the sort of best case scenario approach where it's like, how about we make our console with a profit and we make games that people want, so we also make profit off of that.
Which is that's the thing that's really interesting to me is like I've never met a single person who's like I don't like any Nintendo games.
Yeah.
I'll take that back. I've met a few, but they're like really jaded and like sad people. So like
they're the Twitter Twitter people who have console wars in their
Yeah,
description.
they're those people. They're also like
They're weird.
or like the hyper PC gamers who are like, why are you have a Switch? You can just buy a PC. I'm like, yeah, but I can't play Breath of the Wild on the PC. We're selling a stupid series. This is for babies. All right,
Shut up.
Nintendo is also different because all of their IP is well known. Like there's very few things that they have created that people are not like, oh yeah, Metroid, I know what that is, or Zelda, or Mario, or Pokemon.
I mean, literally all the things that we listed earlier. Kirby.
Yeah.
The sports games. I mean, Wii Sports, huge.
Huge.
Mario Strikers, lesser known, but still Mario. Fire Emblem, Xenoblade, Pokemon, Bayonetta, less known, still big. Metroid, Splatoon, Zelda. All of those are really well known.
Well known and also well regarded. That's the other thing that I think is important.
Yeah.
Like, they're usually solid games. They're not always like the best. You know, I mean, like the last Kirby game that came out was kind of blunt, like bleh. But
Yeah, that's true.
but it's still Kirby.
It's like you see Kirby, you're like, yeah. It's the big guy.
Look at him, shove that entire light bulb in his mouth and turn it on with his
Why
cool
is he
tongue.
doing that? What a silly
He's
guy.
turning it on with his electric tongue. I hate him for doing that. My name's Dylan.
It just looks weird, okay? That's all I'm saying. It looks
I'm
weird.
not saying he doesn't look weird.
They found a way to make Kirby not cute. It's weird.
He's like in a Cthulhu god. He's above all of this. All he wants to do is just like go find his buds and hang out.
He's only now showing us as a fraction of his true powers and capabilities.
So for me, the big thing is that Nintendo just is making a lot of good games that you can only play on Nintendo, on the Switch, which is that's it. That's the only thing that's different is that they've been doing this since the 80s.
Yeah, this is like their whole philosophy.
They've done it for 40 years.
They do it the Nintendo way, and it's by Jove, it works.
It sure does.
They're able to,
and unless you count the Wii U, in which case it does not actually work.
they have a stumbles every so often.
The Virtual Boy, very bad.
Yeah, they trip every so often, but most of the time they do pretty good.
Guys, that's just our thoughts and opinions. What are your thoughts and opinions? We want to hear them down in the comments. Dylan, where can people find you?
They can find me on YouTube, Tiki Tac, and Twitter using this little name right down here.
It's going to be right down there.
Just search it up, and then you'll find me doing some cool things.
He does a lot of Destiny 2 stuff. It's really cool.
I do love Destiny.
Yeah, and you can find me. I am the Great Uke. Basically everywhere you can see it's going to be right here. And you can find me on Twitch most often. I'm streaming every single Monday and Wednesday at 7 Eastern. I would say daylight savings time is going to be a matter, but like maybe it won't by the time this episode comes out. Who knows?
Times are changing.
Because it's not really a thing anymore, apparently. So, great. So yeah, 7 p.m. Eastern, I'll be there playing games. I just beat Blue Dragon.
You did?
I did.
You finally beat it?
I beat it, thank goodness. It was hysterical. The ending was nuts. Anyway, that's all we got.
Bye!